Okay, we're going to get started. My name is Dick Wagner. With me also is Bill Giannone, the other co-founder of the CREST network. Today, what we do on the fourth Tuesday of the month is we do a question and answer segment. And the Q&A is based on the questions that Bill and I get during the month and or farther beyond than that. And we like to address those, especially if we get that question more than one time, and often we do. So I'm going to see if I can move my screen. And so, Bill, will you talk about the podcast, please?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin, we just wanted to let you guys know that Dick and I are currently operating a podcast. You could find it on Spotify. Just go on there and search CRESTcast, and you'll be able to find some additional content that's unique, a little bit of personal observation, a little bit of education. So kind of a little bit of what you'd expect to get from Dick or myself, centered around primarily the restoration industry. And we'll post on there. We might have 3 or 4 different podcasts that go up every single week, a couple from each of us. From time to time, we'll put one of our Q&A sessions on there as well. It's very, very important to understand that these are just recordings. It's just us by ourselves, kind of just throwing out what's on the top of our head about a topic. But it's a different perspective. You don't have to sit there and grind through the slides. It's kind of more of just having a conversation with us. They'll go anywhere from 15 minutes to maybe a half hour or so. They're not very lengthy. They don't take up a huge amount of time. But if you go through there, you'll be able to see the titles of the episodes, and they might be able to pique your interest. None of it is clickbait. We promise that every time you click on, there's going to be something interesting that can help your business or help your coaching or your marketing efforts. So please try us out. Go on to Spotify and search for CRESTcast and, check us out.
Bill, if also I would mention that all of those podcasts are on the public side of the CREST network as well. They actually have the links to the Spotify podcast. So if you don't have a Spotify account, you can go on the CREST or on the CREST network and click on the CRESTcast, and they're all there. They all show up, and there's probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 of them now on there, and with
Nice.
a lot of different titles that both Bill and I have recorded. So, and then in addition to that, we also have an app. You can go to the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, and you can search the CREST Network, and you can install the app on your phone, either Apple or Droid. And on the app, it also has all of the links to all of the podcasts. It has information about membership. It has information about Bill and myself and the CREST team. And you can email us or click a button and just simply call us from that app. So we have had an app in place for a little while, and it's been extremely popular. So one of the very first questions, and this might seem a little self-serving, but I have had this question asked about once a week, probably for months and months or years. When people are curious about CREST and about Bill and myself, the question is, and I've cleaned it up, but with so many consultants out there in the restoration universe, and you know who they are, why should we go with CREST? Matter of fact, marketing and sales coaches do help marketers and salespeople define their goals, establish the strategies that are going to mesh with the purposes that they have, as well as mesh with the company's purposes. And the goal always is to lead to maximized sales revenue, to the maximum sales and marketing energy and the focus and the engagement. For marketer success, it's critical to identify the right goal and the right strategy. Otherwise, you're going to feel an intense desire to achieve or reach those goals and do it at your maximum or full potential, but you won't know how to do that necessarily. This is one of the reasons why marketing coaches interact regularly with the marketer. We talk about the steps, the processes, the strategies, so they know what to say, who to see, who not to see, who to eliminate from their lists, and very importantly, believe it or not, is what not to say. Marketers should be learning things like, and I wrote a list of them because I can't remember them all in one sitting here, but marketers learn how to bring real value to the client. And it's not about, just as a reminder to you, it's not about fire, water, smoke, or mold. We talk about why a no, why getting a no, an NO, is sometimes very good. We talk about the marketing excuses that marketers often give and why those excuses aren't valid. Oh, it's November 25th, it's Thanksgiving. The week before, people are getting ready for Thanksgiving, and then for the 4 weeks after Thanksgiving, they're getting involved in Christmas. So that's traditionally a terrible time. No, that's just a bogus excuse. We talk about ways to build your credibility. When you are out there marketing, especially if they don't really know you, and this really applies especially well to newer marketers, if they don't really know you, then you have no credibility with them. Think about meeting somebody. I don't care where you meet them, but the first and second and third, maybe the fourth time that you run into them, you meet them, maybe you think they're okay, but you really don't necessarily feel they have strong credibility. If they tell you something, you're going to evaluate it through a very narrow lens. So marketers will be much more likely to stay on task if their coach regularly talks with them about their successes and their failures and ways to change for the better. No matter how many no matter how many talented or friendly people that people think you are, you can be all kinds of friendly, but friendly doesn't prove credibility. Friendly doesn't prove trust. And you know what? If you don't have trust, you have nothing. If they don't trust you, they're never, ever going to give you a referral. You can't get jobs. You can't get referrals unless they trust you. And they're never going to trust you unless you build credibility. CREST works individually with about 24 marketers from everywhere from California and Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Ohio, New York, PA, Connecticut, many other states. Every market is different. When I hear the excuse, well, the plumbers in my market, I can't get to them. That's just an excuse. There is always a way to get to them. Every market must be treated with the preferences and the culture of that specific area. And that's what we do. We study that market, we study that company, we study that marketer, and we understand exactly what we need to do as CREST coaches to do that. However, I'm going to tell you, marketing coaching is not a silver bullet. It's not a silver bullet that immediately improves the generated revenue. And sometimes I have to be the bad guy and tell the owner of the company that their marketer is not going to make it. Billy?
Thanks, Dick. I got this a couple times in the last week from different CREST members. How do I keep from getting thrown off of jobs by the adjuster? You know, this is happening more and more in the industry. The mindset of these insurance companies is shifting in our industry. It's much more about control, the same way that it is in the other parts of insurance. If you think about medical insurance, you know, most of us have in-network or out-of-network doctors. And the insurance company tells you, you have to go to people in the network. If you want to have a procedure, if you want to have some specialist, you need pre-approval. That mindset is finding its way in very, very slowly, but very steadily into our industry. So adjusters are starting to feel like they have a lot more power over controlling the vendors than they ever were able to wield. So be really careful, because if you're not aggressive in what you need to do, you're going to find yourself getting quote unquote thrown off of jobs. You know, in most states, when you sign a contract, there is a period of time, they call it a rescission period, when the homeowner or the buyer is allowed to cancel a contract. In most states, it's about a 72-hour period or 3 days. Now, it's really important for you to understand how that affects you, because, you know, if you go on certain websites or you go on certain blog sites on the internet, you're going to hear people talk about things like tortious interference and, oh, let's sue the insurance company, let's put these guys in jail. And all that sounds great. And in some minor cases where you can actually get to court and prove it, you might be able to get some sort of moral victory. But how's that going to help you? You're off that job. The most important thing is to be able to onboard your client in a way that provides so much value to them up front that they don't listen to the adjuster. Because the adjusters would be speaking illegally if they said to the homeowner, either you throw them off or I'm not going to cover you. They can't say that. If you've heard them say that, that's beautiful. Get the homeowner to sign an affidavit to that, and you will have a perfectly open and shut case. But in most cases, they don't say that. They usually badmouth you, even if they've never worked with you before, by saying, oh, I don't know if I can trust those people. They're going to screw up your bill. They're going to overcharge you. They'll do things like that, which, yes, it's libelous and it's slanderous, but it's much tougher to prove. The easiest way to do this is when you go to the job and you've been called out by either your plumber or they found you on the internet or some other way of finding you. Get out there and really focus on your sales pitch. And I hate that term because it's really not a sales pitch. It's more of an onboarding process. You're onboarding a new client. So you have to make sure you go out there and you educate them. You make sure they understand that what you're out there to do is serious, that there is a time, restriction to the product you're offering. The longer they wait to make up their mind, the more damage it's going to have. That's going to happen to their house and to their livelihood. So let's make sure that we're instantly letting them know that we're the right people because we're professionals. And I'm glad you called us because this is serious. While we're doing that, it's not necessarily all about us, but we have to also put them at ease and let them know that this is something we see all the time. Now, there's a difference between saying this is no big deal and saying this is something we see all the time. When you use the words no big deal, all of a sudden that lowers the value of your service, because if people hear the words no big deal, in their mind, they're thinking hundreds, they're not thinking thousands. So then when the adjuster starts talking about how high your bill's going to be, the homeowner believes him if you've said no big deal. So don't say that. The onboarding is about, this is very serious. I'm glad you call us because we do see this all the time and we are the right firm to do this for you. Then you need to start going through what the script is going to sound like when they get on the phone with their adjuster. You really want to coach them on that phone call when they're going to file their claim and they're going to call that 800 number. Coach them on the call. Let them know what's going to happen. Let them know that they're going to be probably speaking to somebody who's either just taking the information and won't say anything, or if they get transferred to a desk adjuster, the desk adjuster's first question is going to be, have you hired anybody yet? And if you haven't, please don't. We're going to send out one of our vendors for you. You're going to explain to them they want to do that because they want to control the loss, they want to control the work, and they want to minimize the amount of cost that's going to be for them. I'm here for you. The company they send out is going to be there for them. Who would you prefer? See what I'm doing there? I'm couching it so that you're predetermining their responses and their thoughts once the adjuster hears it. The other thing is, once they hear the adjuster talking and they say those exact things that you just said, you've now created trust and credibility in your own words. They don't know you. If they're a company, if they've got an insurance company like a State Farm or an Allstate or a Travelers, chances are they've known that broker or that agent for a long time. And that's why they bought insurance from that company. Well, they associate everybody in the company as being as good as that broker or agent. We have to educate them on the way that the claims process works and that those guys are out to minimize costs, not necessarily to maximize benefit to the client. So it's all about the onboarding. When we get out there, we always coach them. And a lot of our CREST members now understand it's very important to teach them how to handle that phone call. Because if you handle that phone call properly, the guy on the other end of the phone is going to know that you're in place and you can't get thrown off. Okay. You notice I never said anything about going in there and turning on air movers and scrubbers and spiking jobs. I didn't say that. I said using your onboarding and using your sales process as a tool to give you more credibility. It solves that problem of getting thrown off jobs 99% of the time. The 1% of the time that you can't control it and it happens, now you've got that much more ammunition. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Bill. This is an odd one. This is something that came up because in my weekly coaching with a couple dozen people, I have often talked about using metaphors. And so I always get the question, why metaphors? Why is that important? The reality of it is that Webster's dictionary says a metaphor is a figure of speech, often like an analogy, using a word or a phrase to suggest a similarity or a likeness. As an example, he's drowning in paperwork, or she broke my heart. Those are metaphors. You hear metaphors every day. We all use them. Most of us use them, but don't realize it. Things like he bent over backwards. or stop and smell the roses, or you're my sunshine, or that's like comparing apples to oranges. We hear these metaphors every day. The better we get at using the most accurate word for the situation, the better we communicate. And the more likely people will listen to us. People often ask us questions like, who are you? Or what do you do? Or how long will this take? Or how much is this going to cost? You have to have an answer. And we have found that metaphors, when you respond with a metaphor, it makes far more sense. And the better you use, the better metaphor you actually use, it's directly proportional to how well they understand and even how much they trust you. Remember the old adage, people buy from people they trust. A metaphor can easily enhance your relationship because your responses are easy for them to follow and they make sense to them and they are more open to you. You need your prospects more open to you. You need your customer more open to you. If they ask you, for example, why your company? What's so special about your company? I love the analogy or the metaphor. I love the response. We are to restoration what Nike is to sports. We are, in this day and age, the difference of everybody else is still using the buggy whip, and we've moved on to a Porsche. Or speed. How fast is this going to, or how quickly are you going to be here? And the response is, we're like the Porsche. We really move fast, but not so fast that we break the speed limit. We're careful and cautious of your situation. Folks, we use metaphors every day. And topics such as cars and weather and politics and support or sports, they're great bridges to incorporate metaphors into your presentations. If you are in the electrical industry, you might be asked, well, how are you different than your competitor? And I already told you, we're as an electrical contractor, what Nike is to sports. You've all said things like, he hit it out of the park, or I got a home run, or I got a hole in one. We're not necessarily playing sports, but we respond that way. The classic response when a customer asks, when will it be finished? And we respond with some platitude, and I've heard this. I was actually taught this 25 years ago by a very arrogant boss. When we respond, hey, it's done when it's done. That's incredibly disrespectful. It's a terrible way to answer your customer. Using a metaphor is so much softer and it's much more respectful, and it helps them appreciate you on a different level. Try saying, it's difficult to give you an exact length of time, because just like those having major surgery, one may recover quicker than the other. It really depends on so many factors. That's certainly a lot better and a lot less offensive or disrespectful than saying, hey, it's done when it's done. Okay. And I'm done now that I'm done. Thank you, Billy.
That was a good one, Dick. Yeah, this one looks like it should be a Dick question, but I've gotten it a couple of times from owners, so I want to address it for everybody who's going to be listening or watching. Plumbers are different here than anywhere else. How can I get through to them? Dick mentioned this just before. Plumbers are plumbers are plumbers, and that is generally true. But also what Dick was talking to early on was that every market is different. We coach basically in all four corners of the country and everywhere in between. And from member to member, there are different things. Like, for instance, we coach in the New York, New Jersey area, and we coach down here in Atlanta in very large cities. And the plumbing companies here are very, very different in their structure than they are in some of the more rural areas. You don't tend to get 20 or 30 or 40 truck operations in your more rural areas. You might get a dominant guy might have 5 or 6 trucks because the density and volume of people is just not the same. Even if he's the master plumber and he controls the entire marketplace of a couple 100,000 people, he might have 10 trucks. You know, here in Atlanta, you've got 6.5 million people. There are many, many companies with 30, 40, 50 trucks. And then, of course, the old one man in a truck, or as we, affectionately call them, chucks in a truck. The chuck in a truck, there are hundreds, if not 1,000 of them here in Atlanta. Again, so the volume of just what you have here is a lot different. So when it comes to being able to get through to them, their needs are basically the same no matter where you are. It just might be a difference of the structure of the company itself. If you're in a more rural area or if you're in a suburban area, you're going to have a lot more contact with owner operators. You're going to be talking to Charlie from Charlie's Plumbing. In the bigger cities, you might be talking to the technicians out in the field, but the owner might be sitting in an office, and that might be a structure that is very similar to, an agency or a brokerage where you've got to ring the doorbell and you got to get through, and you might have to talk to the owner. So getting through to some plumbing companies, because it might be different. If you're in a big city and it's different, it might be you just don't have the ability to go to the guy in the truck and cut a deal. Maybe the corporate office has to be the one that signs off on any relationships or referral type situations. So you have to get yourself in the office. How do we do that? I don't recommend the cold calling, going and knocking on the door. If you've developed a relationship with one of the guys who's out on the truck, that's probably your best way in. Let him give you the warm introduction. Say to him, hey, Joe, when do you think is a good time for me to meet you over at the office so I can meet your boss and we can discuss ways that we can help each other? I think that's probably a much better way if you're in a larger city than just constantly saying, well, oh, they're a big company, I can't get in. If you found one guy for whatever reason, maybe you met him at a 7-Eleven or you met him at a plumbing supply house, and you want to get in there, that's probably the best way to get in. Now, if you want the specific coaching angles and the language, that's a Dick question. He can answer that for you real easily, but it's just an observation that I've had. The other thing that I think owners need to understand is that they need to offer certain things above and beyond just dollars. Now, dollars for plumbers are important. There's no denying it. At the end of the day, you could either get or lose business based on the fact that you're either paying referrals or you're not paying referrals at a level that's at least competitive with your competitors in your area. That's just a reality, and we can have lots of arguments philosophically about that. But I'm here to tell you that as an owner, there are some things you can do to offer plumbers. Now, Dick talks to your marketers about them, but maybe it hasn't come around to you. You could offer 2 or 3 services to plumbers that can make the difference. If your dollar amount is, even if it's equal or a little bit below, you can make the difference. Here's one thing. Most plumbers, no matter where they are, especially if they're in a more rural area, most plumbers tend to also do remodels. Your local plumber is the guy, if you want to have your bathroom or your kitchen redone, there's a really good chance the plumber is going to be the GC for that type of work. Yes, you have home renovation people who do that as well, and then we'll hire plumbers. But if you want to get your bathroom redone, most plumbers will do that work, and then they'll sub out the tile work or the structural work to other people. But you could do that through plumbers. Well, through anecdotal stories, we found out one of the biggest hassles that plumbers have is they're not really clean and neat when it comes to the demo side of their work. They're not used to doing that. They're just used to getting in there and fixing pipes, and usually someone else is doing the demo. Well, what would a plumber think if you said to him, oh, the next time that you have to redo a bathroom, the day that you're going to start, let us come over there and I'll send a crew over, and it'll take them no more than an hour. But first thing in the morning, we'll put some containment up for you so that all the demo you do in that bathroom can be contained. And you know what else we'll do for you, Charlie? We'll drop a scrubber in that containment for you. What do you think that's going to do for Charlie? Number one, you just made him look a lot more professional in the eyes of his client who doesn't know who you are. Number two, you're helping him out and you're giving him a service that he wouldn't want to pay for, because I'm sure he's very competitive in his quotes and his margins. So it's a way for you to give him value. Those are really, really important aspects. You're showing how you care about him. Like Dick always says, it's not about you. It should be about how do you make your lead sources look like heroes. So if you're an owner and you haven't thought about that yet, that's something that you and your marketer should be working on. Some really good language. Another way to help them out is if they happen to be doing these kinds of renovations, there's a really good chance if they're a smaller company, they're working out of their house or their garage. What are they doing with all that debris? Well, if you're a larger restoration company, there's a really good chance somewhere you've got a dumpster, or you keep a dumpster back at your shop. Almost everybody I know who's got a decent sized restoration business has a dumpster back at their site, because it's cheaper than going to the dump every single time you guys do demo. So why don't you do this? Why don't you tell the plumber, hey, when you're done with your demo, give us a call. We'll send our guys by. We'll pick up all the trash for you and we'll put it in our dumpster for you. It might not sound like much, but if he has to spend $250 to get one of those little 10-yard dumpsters at the job site, and now you just kept him from having to spend that money, that all goes in his pocket. That really, really makes a big difference. It doesn't cost a ton for you. It might cost you a half hour for your guy's labor to get over there and pick it up, but it's a big, big, big thing for him. Those are the kinds of things that you can do to get through to plumbers as an owner that can help your marketers. And you know what? That's universal. That doesn't change just because you're in a large city or you're in a small little suburban area. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Bill. Great info. I hear a lot about being a thought leader. Is that really important? Well, a thought leader is someone that's considered a go-to person. It's someone that continually has innovative and useful ideas. It's someone who creates a celebrity type status, even if it's in your local market. And thought leaders are just known. They're known for being really a maven or a trusted advisor. I want to expand just a little more. A thought leader or an influencer is someone who, based on their expertise and their perspective in a specific industry, offers unique guidance and inspires innovation and helps or contributes to influencing others. Ask yourself these questions. Do your thoughts advance a concept or an idea? Are your thoughts actionable? In other words, can you or can they actually implement some of your ideas? Do you have data and research that backs up your ideas and your thoughts? And is your point of view fresh and new and current with 2022? Bill and I are doing podcasts as well as many, many other things. Long-term webinars and short-term videos and writing articles. And we're doing this almost every single day. And the reason we're doing it is because it's current, it's happening today. And we want to be thought leaders so that we can, yes, so that we can influence you to do something different than the same old, same old. Will they change the way they think or act because of what you told them? Well, I can tell you, I've been coaching for many years, and I only try to bring information to my marketers that's current for that specific time, that works for that specific time, and that the average guru, self-proclaimed coach, they're not teaching that. So many of them are rehashing the old stuff, and that isn't being a thought leader of today. Once you've asked yourself the questions that I just rattled off, it's going to be necessary for you to start building that maven or trusted advisor perception for your clients and your community to actually think about. There are several ways to implement thought leadership. One is building your influence. Try your ideas out with a trusted, knowledgeable person that has something in the game. It could be a colleague, it could be a mentor, it could be a friend, somebody that you sit around and drink beer with, or a glass of wine. These initial interactions will tell you how to position and leverage your message to tell a far bigger story that gets followers on board. A real quick example, I had a pool party on Saturday for actually for a grandson and his birthday, and a new person showed up with my granddaughter, and he's a house builder. Actually, he recently, in the last couple of years, built the Holiday Inn Express just a couple miles from here. And he said to me, you know, what do you do? And my response was, well, I'm a tactical specialist. And his, you know, he got that funny look on his face, like, what the heck are you talking about? And so then he said, well, what is a tactical specialist? And my response was, I help marketers build relationships and meet new people that can give them jobs. And he says, well, I want to talk with you. I want to get more homes to build. I want to build more hotels or commercial property. And so after just a brief conversation, we determined, or he determined, just holy crap, I just never knew that this stuff was out there. You must live it and breathe it every day. And I do. I live it and breathe it every day. Something else that you should do you should, I don't care how good of an author or a writer you are, you should be writing every single week. You should be writing articles every single week. And they should either be going on your blog site, or you should be like Bill and I do. We send them to CNR magazine or R&R magazine or Clean Facts, or I've written some and sent them to Contractor magazine, and they're published. And when you're published, people have a different perception of you. Be sure your ideas are tested and they're proven, and they can be repeatable, because you just can't put garbage out there. And when you take it to the next level by detailing a clear blueprint, that's really establishing a thought leader position. And then last but not least, in my perception of being a thought leader, reach out to a branding expert to help with writing and formulating a voice that's really powerful and can avoid getting you in trouble by saying the wrong things. Many times, a skilled marketing and sales coach can help you with that. And hey, I'm more than happy to do that. Okay, Billy?
Thank you, Dick. Is our industry really recession-proof? This is a very prescient conversation that I've had a couple times. This Thursday, the government's going to put out information about the gross domestic product, the GDP. You've all heard that phrase. The technical definition of a recession is when we have 2 consecutive quarters, 3-month periods of negative growth. If the economy shrinks for 2 consecutive quarters, that's the definition of a recession. And on Thursday, we're going to get the information for the second quarter. The first quarter, we had negative growth, and they're forecasting that we're going to get negative growth again. So there's a lot of political talk going back and forth on what is a recession? Are we really in a recession? Whose fault it is? And none of that really matters. But I did have a couple questions about that from concerned owners, because if they hear recession, everybody always thinks negative thoughts, rightfully so, because the economy is contracting. But they also were very, very confused because a lot of their friends were telling them, oh, you're in the insurance business, so you don't have to worry about it. The insurance business doesn't get affected by recession. So let's talk about some facts here. And just so you know, Dick was talking about how we will send in information. I just sent in an article regarding this to R&R magazine, and I have not heard back yet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be published in their next edition based on the timeliness of the recession and the fact that a lot of people in the industry know that I used to work on Wall Street. So when Dick's talking about thought leaders, I do have that perception within our industry of having that background. So I am more of a thought leader and subject matter expert than a lot of other people. In our industry, my answer is yes and no to whether we're recession proof. Generically speaking, a lot of the work we do, the ultimate money that pays us comes from insurance companies. And yes, broken pipes and hurricanes and storms don't know anything about the economic condition of our country. So yes, the work itself will not slow down. But here's what will happen. Your homeowners, if the recession gets bad enough, are not going to be able to afford the premiums or the deductibles. So they're then going to go to their agents and say, listen, I got to cut back my costs. Is there a cheaper insurance I can get? And we all know what happens when you buy cheaper insurance. You have less coverage. So you're going to start seeing, if this recession is bad and it starts lasting more than a couple of months, you're going to start seeing, you're going to show up to jobs and you're going to think, oh, this has been covered for 10 years. Guess what? What you're doing may not be covered, or there might be limitations of coverage. Dick will tell you down in Florida, they're starting to write caps in even for water damage. And that cap is not enough for you guys to just go ahead and do the things that you've always thought about doing your whole lives. The cap might be $10,000, which includes repairs. So just understand that's where the recession can start hitting you. That's first place. Second place, usually at the start of a recession, like we're seeing right now, there's a spike in prices. Usually as we head into recession, the smart people who are planning for a recession do a lot of buying up front. That creates what they call a demand surge. And pricing is usually the subject of two things, supply and demand. So when demand goes up, usually that creates a spike in price. So you're seeing that now. Okay. What will happen is there will be a supply weakness as the recession keeps going. When there's a supply weakness, because companies are going to cut back, they're going to feel like, oh, there's not as much purchasing going on, and that's going to happen as well. Then there's going to be a supply weakness. Supply weakness also raises prices. So normally a recession doesn't lead to lower prices, it leads to higher prices. So you're going to be spending more for certain things, all your materials, your plastics, things like that. You're going to be spending more on those because the people you get it from are not going to be just kind of producing them ad infinitum. They're going to have a tougher time floating their bills. They're going to have a tougher time making their payrolls, and they're going to have a tougher time resourcing their materials, because as interest rates rise, which they do during a recession, the cost of operating your company goes up. Hopefully most of us aren't subject to this, but the largest companies in America use lines of credit to operate their businesses. As they have to use those lines of credit for the last 10 years, companies have basically paid zero to borrow money. I'll repeat it again. Companies in the last 10 years have paid zero to borrow money. So they've been able to grow their company by borrowing money for free. Well, right now, mortgages are going to go up to 6.5% in the next month. They were 3% or less. That's going to hurt that side of the market. It's also going to hurt purchasing, which if you were borrowing at zero and now you're borrowing at 3 and 4%, which is what companies are going to have to borrow at, if not more, that's a big negative effect on your ability to operate your company. All of these things are going to stress you. Yes, the work might still come in, but how you execute it's going to be far different. Finally, your staffing at the start of a recession is going to be more difficult, because right now, people are being forced to pay higher salaries than they were a year ago because the cost of living is going up. So we have to try to help our employees out, especially the good ones. We have to help them survive and be able to live through this higher cost by giving them more money. We're doing that without necessarily raising our pricing or having the prices in Xactimate change. So that's going to be another strain. Those are things within your company that you're feeling already, and they are byproducts of us going into a recession. You just don't know it yet. So is our industry recession proof? Let's just say the workflow might be recession proof, but if we're not really nimble about how we manage all those additional hurdles that the recession brings, your company might not end up being recession proof. Thanks, Dick.
Wow. I think I just thought I sat through an economics class.
Yeah, sorry for the boredom, but I think it's important for everybody to hear it.
Oh, it is. Absolutely. So last but not least in my questions is, and I'm asked this, oh my gosh, I'm asked this regularly, probably 3 or 4 times a month. And it's been an ongoing question for years. How do I qualify my marketing prospects? How do I evaluate who might be giving me work and who isn't going to ever give me work? So how do I qualify? Well, there is a bit of subjectiveness in it, but most marketers in the disaster restoration business are typically asking the concept or the question of marketing and developing relationships. How do I do that? How do I do that with property and casualty insurance agents, as well as plumbers and contractors? Some of them are never, ever going to give me work, and some of them will give me plenty of work. In reality, there are usually somewhere between 250 and 400 P&C insurance agents in a typical marketing territory. If you plan to visit each one once a month, let's say there are 300, let's just pick that number. That means you're going to have to visit 15 insurance agents every single day, Monday through Friday. And that means you're going to max out your 8 to 5 day. The fact is, you should not be visiting all 300 every month, month after month. I had a marketer who, when I started working with her, she had 240 insurance agents on her, what I would call her route. She referred to it as her route. And she said, I visit all of them every month. And so my question was, how long have you been visiting them? She says, well, most of them I've been visiting for up to 4 years. So then I couldn't help but ask the next embarrassing question. Of those 240 insurance agents, how many of them actually have sent you work ever? And she said, well, maybe 20 of them, maybe 24 of them. And so I'm going to, here's the obvious question. You've been calling on 240 insurance agents for 4 years, and you've only convinced 24 of them to do business with you? That's a serious problem. The reality is that you need to be qualifying your prospects and putting them into categories. If they're an A client, there's somebody that has referred a loss to you within the past 6 to 12 months. I say 12 months. I'm conservative and generous. Bill Giannone says 6 months. If they are a B prospect, that's somebody that has not sent you a loss. You've been calling on them maybe for up to 12 months, but they haven't given you a job so far. That's what I would categorize or put into the B column. And then I've said for a long time, C stands for crap. C prospects, they continually bluff you. They make promises that they never keep. And they give you bogus excuses like, I haven't had any losses, or I only refer my policyholders to Claims Central. Or maybe it's something as bizarre as we don't get involved in claims. We let our policyholders be at the mercy of Claims Central or the adjuster. Or we're not allowed to refer anybody, or we're happy with who we're using now. There's all kinds of crazy excuses. And so there are strategies, there are tactical processes that you can ask, there are tactical questions, there are ways that you can narrow down the situation so that you can find out, are they ever going to send you a job, or is there a possibility that they might be you might be able to convert them from a B to an A. In my weekly coaching, I work with marketers like that, and I help them understand what questions they can ask that aren't offensive. They're not in their face problematic, but they find out really quick who's going to send them jobs or who's likely to and who's not. There's no question about it that having a gut feeling about a prospect, and oh my God, I hear this, I'm going to say weekly from some of my marketers. I talked with somebody yesterday, a marketer who said, well, my gut is that they're never, ever going to send me a job. Okay, that's probably true if you've narrowed down that prospect by asking them some very key questions that help you understand in your gut whether or not they're ever going to give you a job. A complete evaluation with logical data, properly analyzed, along with some gut feeling, should help establish where the prospect falls within the A, B, or C category. In my coaching, it's no surprise that I've had marketers tell me they've been calling on agents or plumbers for years, and they still hope to convert them from an A or from a C to an A. I've got to tell you, that's like blind perseverance or blind persistence. It's certainly like sticking your head in the sand. The owner, your owner, can't afford to have you blindly call on those people with no payback month after month, year after year. C prospects aren't worth calling on. If you want to relegate them to a once a quarter email blast, sure, go ahead and do that. But quit wasting your valuable time calling on, visiting those prospects that are never going to send you work. You are, as a marketer, you're worth far more than that. And your employer is paying you for results. They're not paying you for how many visits you can make each month. Don't stick your head in the sand. Don't have blind ignorance and say, well, or try to point to, well, it's about perseverance, or it's about consistency or whatever. That's becoming that's what's the phrase? Another metaphor. That's stepping over dollars to pick up dimes. Please don't do that. Billy?
Thank you, Dick. Just on that note, I'm glad you brought that up. And this is, again, just so everybody knows, we know the questions that each of us are going to answer, but we never know what the answers are. And one of the things I want to let you know is I'm going to be doing a 4-part podcast coming up in the next week or so. And it's all about how do owners measure the success or failure of the different parts of their company. And that's exactly what we are going to be talking about when it comes to the marketing. If you're measuring visits, you're encouraging that kind of activity. So we're going to really cover that a lot, but it was great logic. Thanks, Dick. My last question, and I'll keep it short. I know we're running up on an hour here. Is it me, or are the carriers getting tougher when it comes to paying my invoice? It's not you. They are getting tougher. Again, my word of advice, know how the game is played and play the game better than them. Don't go on the internet and read these guys who don't do this for a living, who are telling you to change the game. All right. You see what I have the language there? Carriers getting tougher when it comes to paying by invoice. What are they going to tell you on the internet? You don't work for the insurance company. You work for the homeowner. Screw the insurance company. You force the homeowner to pay your bill. All that's well and good, and it's all technically correct, and it's all well intentioned. But anybody who's out there every day running a company or helping to run a company knows this isn't the reality. We know that if you're doing water damage, residential water damage restoration, you're getting your money ultimately from the owner through the carrier. It's absolutely a fact. So if the carrier is giving the homeowner a tougher time or giving you a tougher time, the reality is you've got to do something about that. How do you do that? I said it before when we were talking about getting thrown off jobs. It starts with onboarding. Set that precedent. We talked about don't say the words, this is no big deal. Set the precedent that this is going to be in the thousands of dollars, not in the hundreds of dollars. Educate your client that your service is a specialty service. And even though it just might be a couple hours of your time and a couple pieces of equipment, what they're paying for is the specialty. When you go to the doctor for an MRI, you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars for 10 minutes of a visit and for somebody to read, for some technician to read your MRI. You're not paying for the time, you're paying for all the expertise and training that went into those people being the experts. We are that same thing. We're not a blue collar guy who shows up and he's just going to rough it. We're somebody who's got years and years of training. We've got specialty equipment. We've got lots of insurance. We've got lots of experience. That's what they're paying for. Set that precedent up front. When I say play the game, if you're billing an Xactimate, you have to know Xactimate. Don't put on one line item for demo if you're demoing things that require 3 and 4 line items. They're in there for a reason. If they weren't supposed to be billed for, they wouldn't be line items in Xactimate. So you have to bill. So if you're demoing out a floor, you have to make sure if it's carpet, you're taking the carpet and the pad and the tack strips, and you're removing the baseboard and you're removing the shoe moldings. Those are the kinds of things you have to remember to do. When you're doing your cleaning, you have to remember to do your cleaning and your vacuuming and your applying of antimicrobial. There's all steps to that. If you don't know that, go back and take those classes again, the WRT classes. If they're telling you that there's a certain way to demo or clean or set equipment, make sure you're charging for all of it. That's the game when I say play it better than them. And then write your invoice. When you submit it, submit your Xactimate with a lot of F9 notes. Give them more rather than less. Take hundreds of photos, give them access to all the photos. That's going to keep it easier. There are many CREST members that Dick and I work with on a monthly basis that have been with us for more than a year, who are now collecting more and faster than they did a year ago. If you don't believe us, give me a holler, drop me an email or send me a text message and I'll introduce you to those people so you can get firsthand credibility statements out of them, okay? But let's just remember, it is getting tougher. They're going to want to hold on to their money. Let's make sure that we're playing their game better than them. Thanks, Dick.
Thank you, Bill. This next slide was a reminder about the CREST library. All of the people that are on here are already familiar with the CREST library, so I'm not going to talk about it. I'm Dick Wagner. You've just heard from Bill Giannone. Thank you for joining us. We did go over about 5 minutes, and we appreciate your willingness to hang with us during our hour and 5 minutes. This is being recorded and it will be on the website, and it will also be on Spotify as a podcast if you want to listen to it again. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. See you later.